It's been 50 years since she was appointed leader of the Conservative Party and led them to 3 successive victories. She's the UK's longest serving post-war Prime Minister, and no British female leader, other than maybe Elizabeth I, has been the subject of so many plays and films. But what do you think about her legacy? Was she good for Britain, Geoff?
Well, look, I think not. Like most people, I'm not at ease with every single thing she did. The way the miners' campaign was conducted, Section 28, those would definitely go in the cons column. But overall, look, I don't think it's controversial to say that she is a hero. Even a Labour Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, on a podcast recently spoke about the fact that she saw her being a Prime Minister, and that smashed the glass ceiling for somebody like Rachel Reeves to come through. And it's a debate where I doubt very many people listening to this are going to change their minds. So I'll just throw in one thing for consideration, right?
Okay.
With Donald Trump being like he is, who would you think would be more effective at speaking truth to power, Keir Starmer or Margaret Thatcher? I'm just throwing it out there. I'm just saying, would she be able to influence him more than our current leader? I suspect she would.
OK, I'm going to put you down as hero, but you can answer that question, Owen.
A bombshell. Not, yes, she's my biggest inspiration, actually, Margaret Thatcher. In a way, she
that
is.
Really would be a bombshell.
In a way, she is. Not that way. I mean, in terms of I grew up in Margaret Thatcher's Britain. I grew up in the Britain she built. And that was a Britain in which entire communities had been devastated and have never recovered. You mentioned the miners, but entire industries were just ravaged without any replacement. And entire communities based around those industries were just left to rot and to fester. What happened in terms of smashing the unions has meant, if you look at the cost of living crisis, it has a lot to do with it. Workers aren't able to stand up to themselves and get a proper slice of the wealth they create. It's led to a lot of debt in the economy instead to keep up people's living standards. The housing crisis, flogging up council housing, was popular for many people at the time.
It worked fine if they'd have built if successive subsequent governments would have built more new council houses.
4 out of 10 of those sold off are now rented out by private landlords, charging twice the rent, and it's caused a massive housing crisis. We could go on, the inequality. I didn't even say.
So am I guessing villain for you then?
Privatised energy.
Just about.
Privatising energy and other utilities and the disaster that's caused.
My old man was a union man, but I did ask him, like, at that period where Thatcher came in, what was the mood? You were in the trade union movement, and he said, look, she went too far, but there was an issue with the power of the unions. It was holding Britain back. And let's remember, at the end of the 70s, Britain was the sick man of Europe. So did she go too far, too fast? Arguably, but we couldn't carry on like we were.
But you say that. The average growth in the 1980s of the economy was the same as the 1970s.
What was the inflation?
In the 1990s, well, yeah.
Inflation went down under Margaret
Inflation
Thatcher.
went up in Britain and elsewhere because for start with the oil shock of the early 70s, that's what triggered much of the inflation in the first place. But what happened is, what she did was create a Britain where we had less growth. Every decade since, we had lower and lower growth in the Britain she built, but the lower growth was less equitably distributed. That growth ended up in the bank accounts of a few. The best decade for growth was the 1960s, and then we had strong trade unions, nationalisation, high taxes on the rich.
Let's go to the calls and find out what you think at home. William from Renfrewshire, so we're going straight to Scotland.
Oh.
I think I know which one I'm going to pick up, but am I wrong? Are you going to go Devil?
They do exist.
Yeah, hello there. Hello, Storm.
Margaret Thatcher, hero or villain?
Could I just say I'm joyed to see Owen Jones on the panel. What a star he is.
Right back at you, William.
Journalist.
Right
He's a real
back at you.
journalist.
Your fivers in the post from Owen.
I bet you now say she's a hero and just shock us all.
Anyway, he's covered quite a lot of Thatcher. But any working class people who think Thatcher was great have to look at her history. She was a supporter of Pinochet, a dictator who killed his own people.
My parents
she
took in
wanted
refugees.
Mandela jailed over apartheid. She had 3 million unemployed, poll tax, the Falkland, which she's remembered for. They had a gunboat patrolling the Falklands and she took it away, and 2 of her cabinet said she shouldn't have done it. So while her popularity was failing, the Falklands brought her into popularity again. She won an election. She privatised almost everything, ruined the country, and we see it today. And also, the big thing they made about council houses, of which Owen came across, she did it for 3 reasons. She did it so she didn't need to maintain the houses. She would make money off the houses, and people were scared to go and strike because if they were council houses, they'd a leeway in time to...
But William, there would be an argument to be made to say that actually what she did with the council houses gave people a leg up and allowed people to get on a property ladder that may not have been able to.
It happened it literally happened in my family. It was a huge transfer of people from like social mobility. Now, I agree with you that we didn't build enough council houses in successive generations after that and governments, but you can't deny the transformative effect it had at the time.
Well, that's because councils aren't going to buy homes that are just going to build homes that are going to be flogged off.
Excuse me, she didn't want to build council houses. She wanted to keep us like serfs. I was a shop steward at that time, and I was in disputes where I went to support workers and police were sent out, and I've never been in trouble in my life, and that was through Thatcher's laws on the unions.
All right, we've got lots and lots of calls coming in, William, but you've made your point really, really clear, and your vote is, in fact, on the board. Derek from Northamptonshire, what's your vote going for, angel or villain?
I would say angel.
Oh, right, OK, and why's that?
Well, good afternoon, everybody.
Hi.
I would put top of my list of her various attainments and achievements the introduction of the poll tax, which was a much better system than we have now, which is called, of course, the council tax. We have a system now whereby people can be asset rich but cash poor, and we need to do something about that.
Derek, it is a controversial point you make. Sorry, Derek, I'm only interrupting because I need to get more votes. Controversial point you make, but some people do like the idea of a poll tax rather than what we have. Derek, thank you for your call. Bob from Wakefield, what's your vote? Are you a hero or a villain when it comes... Is Thatcher a hero or a villain when it comes to you?
Hi, Tom. My view is she's a villain. I happen to think she's the most evil woman that ever entered the Houses of Parliament. I'm the son of a miner, and I know what went on in the miners' strike, and it was terrible what she did. She pulled out every stop to try and destroy the union, and in fact, that's what she did. But unfortunately, the unions have never been as powerful as it's been made out by the Tory party.
And yet, Bob, we're getting laws put in place now to constrict the unions even further because we've had strikes by junior doctors, by nurses, by rail workers. I mean, the strikes are pretty endless at the moment, and garbage refuge collectors in Birmingham at the moment.
We've just had a Labour government come in and given them fairly decent pay settlements without very many conditions. So I'd argue, it might have gone one way, but it's certainly moved a bit back the other.
Well,
All right,
but those are the anti-union laws. It's very hard to strike.
Thank you for your call. Sorry. Pat from Merseyside, I've got 1 minute. Was Thatcher a villain or a hero?
A villain, absolute villain. I would put her on a par with Cromwell. Merseyside got decimated, and most of the North Midlands. People were committing suicides, families were broken up. She is the person who's made society what it is now, a broken society and a broken Britain. She is the most evil thing this country ever produced.
Pat, do you think she was evil? Do you think she was evil, or she just didn't have a big enough view on the future of some of her policies?
I think she was totally evil. She had a downer on the working classes of this country.
All right, Pat, thank you very much for your call. Well, it's pretty conclusive there. As far as our viewers are concerned, or those that called up, Margaret Thatcher is a villain. Only 2 for hero. Huge thank you to our panel, Geoff and Owen, for joining me today. Thank you for all your calls and messages.